The first mistake I made in my first life was leaving my phone on my desk. The second was trusting the woman sitting at the desk opposite mine. This time, leaving my phone behind was not a mistake. It was bait. Through the slight gap in the restroom door, the polished surface of the main office floor reflected the scene like a distorted mirror. I watched the reflection of Jessica's perfectly manicured crimson nails, the same shade she'd worn that day a lifetime ago, tap confidently on my phone's screen. One swipe, a tap on delete. And just like that, my interview confirmation with Zenith Corp vanished into the digital ether. It was happening again. A metallic taste, the bitter copper of déjà vu, flooded my mouth. I saw her shoulders relax in the reflection, a minute sigh of satisfaction she thought was unobserved. She placed the phone back on my desk, angling it precisely as I had left it. A ghost of a smile played on her lips before she schooled her features into a mask of benign indifference, turning back to her own monitor. In my previous life, the discovery sent me into a spiral of frantic, tearful panic. I'd spent hours on the phone with HR, unable to prove I ever had an interview, sounding more unhinged with every desperate plea. I had been a mouse in her trap. This time, watching her through the warped reflection, I was the scientist observing the mouse. My chest tightened, but the sensation was different now. It was that same vicious cocktail of white-hot rage and chilling vindication, yet the proportions had been inverted. The rage was no longer a consuming fire. It was a cold, dense star of energy in my core. The vindication, however, was glorious. It was the ultimate proof that I wasn't insane, that my memories of a future that had already passed were real. She was exactly who I remembered her to be, and she was performing her part in this tragic play with perfect, predictable malice. I pushed the restroom door open, the soft hydraulic hiss silencing the low hum of the office. She looked up, her fake innocent smile clicking into place. "Oh, Maya, you were in there for a while. Everything all right?" "Just freshening up," I said, my voice even, betraying none of the storm within. Ready for the final push on the quarterly reports. I walked back to my desk, my gaze deliberately avoiding my phone. I could feel her watching me, waiting for the moment of discovery, the inevitable breakdown she so enjoyed engineering. Let her wait. The Zenith Corp interview is scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. In just under 18 hours, she believes my last and best chance at their coveted executive program will have been irrevocably destroyed. She thinks I am cornered, that this job, this miserable stepping stone where she reigns as the office's petty tyrant, is all I have. She sees my ambition as a threat to her own stagnant career and has decided once again to amputate it. What Jessica doesn't know is that 3 other offers, contingent, of course, on my gracefully exiting my current role, are burning a hole in my encrypted, password-protected email folder. Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, and a particularly aggressive offer from Tesla. They are my parachute, my war chest, and my sword, all rolled into one. She thinks she's playing checkers with a pawn, but she's facing a queen who has already seen the entire board, memorized every move, and knows the outcome of a game that ended in tragedy. Jessica doesn't know that I already died once, my career and spirit crushed under the weight of her relentless sabotage. She doesn't know I came back armed with the one thing she could never account for, the future. I didn't pick up my phone. Leaving it there, a silent testament to her crime, was a more powerful statement. I sat, the familiar cushion of my office chair feeling different beneath me, charged with an alien energy. My fingers flew across the keyboard, not with the frantic rhythm of report writing, but with the calm, deliberate keystrokes of a predator setting a snare. I opened my personal email, navigated to the encrypted folder labeled contingency, and selected the 3 gleaming PDF files within. I attached them to a new message, addressed it to Jessica's corporate email, and typed the subject line that had been screaming in my mind for what felt like a lifetime. Oops, wrong inbox. I hit send. Then I stood up. The sound of my heels on the cheap office linoleum was a sharp staccato beat in the otherwise monotonous drone of keyboards and air conditioning. A few heads lifted from their monitors, their faces passive with mild curiosity. I didn't look at them. My eyes were fixed on the back of Jessica's head as I closed the distance between our desks. I didn't stop in front of her or to the side. I walked directly to the edge of her workspace and stood there, silent and still, my shadow falling over her keyboard. She tried to ignore me for a few seconds, her typing becoming just a little too fast, a little too loud. Finally, the sheer, unnerving weight of my presence became too much. "Can I help you, Maya?" she asked, her voice tight with forced politeness, not even bothering to look up. "I think so," I said softly. A notification chimed from her computer speakers, the little ping of a new email. Her eyes flickered to the corner of her screen. I saw the exact moment she read the subject line. Her brow furrowed in confusion, then her gaze shot up to meet mine, suspicion warring with irritation. "What is this, some kind of joke?" "Why don't you open it and find out?" Her eyes narrowed, but curiosity won. Her crimson nail jabbed at her mouse and she clicked the message open. For a moment, there was nothing but the low hum of her computer. Then, a sharp, choked intake of breath. Her face, which had been a mask of smug superiority just moments before, began to crumble. The logo seemed to leap off the screen, stark and impossibly prestigious. The elegant blue of Goldman Sachs. The austere, authoritative font of McKinsey & Company. The sleek, futuristic branding of Tesla. "Maya, what is this?" Her voice was a reedy whisper, all its manufactured confidence gone. It cracked on my name. These are offer letters." "Very good, Jessica, you can read. Senior Strategic Analyst, Tesla. Pleased to offer you a starting compensation package of," she mumbled, scrolling frantically, her hand trembling. This is fake. You faked these. This has to be a sick prank." "Does it?" I leaned forward, resting my palms on her desk, bringing my face closer to hers. The scent of her expensive, cloying perfume filled my nostrils, the same scent that had haunted my nightmares. "Do you really want to be the one to call the director of global recruitment at Goldman Sachs and ask if their offer is legitimate? I can forward you his direct line if you'd like. I'm sure he'd be fascinated to hear from one of my colleagues." Her jaw worked, but no sound came out. The blood was beginning to drain from her face, leaving behind a pasty, mottled canvas of shock. "Why?" she finally managed to get out. "Why are you showing this to me?" "I just figured you should be kept in the loop," I said, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush that made the two junior analysts at the next desk bank look over. "Since you've taken such a keen, personal interest in my career prospects. So keen, in fact, that you were just personally managing them on my phone for me not 5 minutes ago while you thought I was in the restroom." That was the kill shot. The last vestiges of color vanished from her cheeks. She looked like a ghost, haunted by a truth she thought was safely buried. I don't know what you're talking about." "No, that's a shame." I straightened up, clasping my hands behind my back. Memory can be a tricky thing. That's why it's so important to document things properly. For example, I just sent a brief follow-up email. You should have received it by now. Her terrified eyes darted back to her screen. With a convulsive twitch, she clicked back to her inbox. The new email was there, sitting malevolently above the one with the offers. The sender was me. The recipient was her. And the CC field contained a single, devastating name, the head of human resources. "Read that subject line for me, Jessica," I commanded, my voice cold and clear. Her lips trembled. "Query regarding corporate device security and privacy policy?" "Precisely," I purred. "Just a quick, time-stamped query about the security of our work devices. Mentioned I had some concerns about my phone being accessed without my authorization while I was away from my desk. I noted the most recent incident occurred at approximately 4:15 p.m. today. I'm sure if HR has any follow-up questions, the overhead security cameras can fill in any blanks. It's amazing what they can see, isn't it? The precise angle of a hand, the swipe of a finger on a screen." "You can't," she breathed, shaking her head in frantic denial. "You can't prove anything." "I don't have to," I said, turning away from her. The show was over. I've already won. As I walked back to my desk, I glanced down at my smartwatch. The custom face I'd programmed glowed back at me, a silent partner in my revenge. A digital countdown ticking down relentlessly. Zenith Corp interview. 17 hours, 23 minutes, and 45 seconds. The timer wasn't for me anymore. It was for her. It was the sound of her world running out of time. Behind me, there was only a profound, suffocating silence. The silence Jessica left in her wake was more damning than any shouting match. It was a vacuum, sucking the air out of the immediate vicinity of our desks. People were studiously not looking, their focus on their screens suddenly intense, but I could feel the ripple of awareness spreading through the office. An event had occurred, a shift in the quiet, brutal social hierarchy. I gave her exactly 90 seconds to stew in it, to feel the eyes on her back, to cycle through the stages of shock, denial, and pure, undiluted panic. Then I picked up my laptop, slid it into its case, and walked with unhurried purpose to the small glass-walled conference room at the center of the floor. I tapped the booking screen on the door, reserving it for an hour under the pretense of a client call. Privacy was essential for what I knew was coming next. From my new perch, the office became a diorama. The sound was gone, replaced by the gentle hum of the room's dedicated air conditioner, but the view was perfect. I watched Jessica snatch her handbag, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. She fumbled with the clasp, pulling out her phone with a trembling hand and nearly dropping it. She didn't retreat to the break room or the hallway. Instead, she began to pace a small, frantic circuit around the central pillar, a caged predator looking for a weak point in the bars. She jabbed at her screen, then held the phone to her ear, her back ramrod straight with tension. I knew who she was calling. I knew the name before it ever formed on her lips. In my first life, the source of Jessica's power was a mystery. It was a force field of rumor and implication that protected her from any real consequences. Whispers of a powerful family and an influential uncle were all I ever had to go on. After Zenith had ghosted me, after my career had crumbled, I'd accepted my defeat as a result of bad luck and my own failure to secure proof of her sabotage. But in the disorienting torrent of memory that came with my second chance, fragmented details sharpened into hard facts. Names, dates, and connections I never could have known were now etched into my mind. One of them was Richard Sterling, her mother's brother. A man who, by a staggering coincidence I could now see was no coincidence at all, sat on the board of directors for Zenith Corp. She was calling in the cavalry. One of the skills I made a point to cultivate in the 18 months since I'd woken up in this second chance was lip reading. I had a lot of conversations to catch up on. Through the thick, soundproof glass, I watched her mouth form the words, her face a contorted mask of fury and desperation. "Uncle Richard, it's me. We have a problem, a significant problem." She paused, listening, her free hand twisting the strap of her handbag into a knot. "No, I am not overreacting. I'm telling you, this is serious." Her eyes, wild and searching, swept across the office floor and locked onto me, sitting calmly in the conference room. A fresh wave of panic seemed to hit her as she realized I was watching. She turned her back to me, but it was too late. I had her. "It's the girl I told you about, the one going for the executive program tomorrow. Maya Chen." Another pause. I could almost hear the avuncular, dismissive tone on the other end of the line. "The little rival from the office?" "Jessica, don't be so dramatic." Her next words confirmed it. "Don't you dare tell me to calm down. You don't understand what she just did. She knows. Somehow, she knows everything." She started pacing again, her voice, even when imagined, growing higher, more frantic. She walked right up to my desk and sent me 3 other offers she has. 3, Uncle Richard, from Goldman, McKinsey, and Tesla. I saw them. The salary figures, it's insane. She has them locked in. This isn't some girl hoping for a job. She's a free agent with a fistful of aces. Her posture changed. The panic was morphing into indignation, the entitled anger of someone whose power was being challenged for the first time. "What do you mean? How is that my problem?" "It's our problem. You got me this interview slot by flagging her resume as problematic. You told them to watch her, to be skeptical. If she walks in there tomorrow, armed with these other offers, and tells them how she's been treated here, if she even hints at anything, it traces back to you. They'll ask why a board member was meddling in a junior hire's file. Block her tomorrow, or we'll both look incompetent. Is that what you want?" I watched her listen, her head nodding furiously. She was winning him over. The threat to his own reputation was the lever she needed to pull. I felt a grim satisfaction. This was the move. The one that had destroyed me before. The invisible hand that had crushed my future, leaving me with nothing but the confused, apologetic regrets of a mid-level HR manager. Now I saw the strings and the puppeteer holding them. Jessica's face hardened, her panic solidifying into a cruel resolve. The final desperate plea was gone, replaced by a cold, clear command. I don't care what you have to do. I don't care what strings you have to pull or who you have to call. She cannot walk into that Zenith building tomorrow. Cancel the interview. Tell them there was a scheduling conflict, a hiring freeze, a meteor shower, whatever you want. Just make sure it's done. I want her gone. Are we clear? She stood rigid for a long moment, listening to his reply. A slow nod. Then, she hung up without saying goodbye. She sagged against the pillar, the frantic energy bleeding out of her, leaving behind a gray, exhausted husk. She had fired her silver bullet. In her mind, the threat was neutralized. The Arctic air from the vent above bit at my exposed arms, raising goosebumps. But I barely felt the cold. Inside, my blood ran furnace hot, not with anger, but with the incandescent burn of absolute clarity. The ghost that had haunted me was finally real. It had a name, a face, and a methodology. And in her desperation to stop me from getting a job I no longer needed, she had confirmed everything. She had handed me the very weapon I would use to dismantle her world. The rest of the workday passed in a state of suspended animation. Jessica, from her brief sojourn to the central pillar, had returned to her desk a changed woman. The frantic panic was gone, replaced by a smug, serene exhaustion. It was the look of a general who has just sent a messenger with terms of unconditional surrender and is merely waiting for the enemy to comply. She avoided my gaze, but I could feel the self-satisfied aura radiating from her, thick and suffocating. She believed she had won. She believed she had snuffed out the threat and restored the natural order of her universe. I finished my reports, cleared my cache, and packed my bag at 5 o'clock on the dot. I gave her a small, tight smile on my way out. She didn't return it. In her mind, I was already a ghost. The walk to the subway was cool, the evening air a welcome balm after the recycled chill of the office. The train was crowded, a press of bodies and tired faces, all heading away from the city's heart. I found a strap to hang on to, letting the rhythm of the rails lull me into a state of calm. I was in no hurry. The pieces were moving on their own now, set in motion by forces far greater than Jessica's petty manipulations. The buzz came as I was walking the final 3 blocks to my apartment. It was a single, sharp vibration from the phone in my pocket. I didn't need to look. I knew what it was. I waited until I was inside, the door locked securely behind me before I retrieved it. There, on the screen, was the email. The subject line was a masterpiece of corporate cowardice. Update regarding your interview with Zenith Corp. Dear Maya Chen, thank you again for your interest in the Executive Development Program. Due to unforeseen scheduling conflicts, we must unfortunately cancel your interview scheduled for tomorrow, June 6th. We understand this is disappointing news, and we apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. We will keep your application on file for any future openings. Sincerely, Zenith Corporation Human Resources. I read it twice. The bland, impersonal text that had shattered my spirit in another lifetime now read like a declaration of victory. Unforeseen scheduling conflicts. I pictured Uncle Richard making a gruff, important-sounding phone call to some terrified subordinate. Apologize for any inconvenience. The sheer, galling hypocrisy of it was a thing of beauty. In my first life, this email had been a death sentence. It had sent me into a tailspin of self-doubt and despair. I had called, I had begged, I had tried to understand what I had done wrong. The silence from their end was my only answer. Tonight, I felt nothing but a profound, icy calm. I navigated away from the email, opened the Tesla offer letter one last time, and digitally signed my name on the final page. The document automatically uploaded to their portal, and a moment later, a confirmation email arrived. Welcome to the team, Maya. Jessica believed her little drama today was the main event. She will go to bed tonight, sleep the sound, untroubled sleep of the wicked and the victorious, and come into work tomorrow expecting to see my empty chair. In her small, limited world, she cannot imagine a reality where I am not devastated. She cannot conceive of a plan that extends beyond the four walls of our office. What she will discover, likely through the office gossip mill sometime in the next 12 hours, is that her grand dynasty-saving maneuver was utterly pointless. I had already accepted the offer from Tesla that morning, long before her panicked call to Uncle Richard. The signed contract was already locked in, the start date was set, and most importantly, the non-compete clause was now in effect. It was a beautiful, restrictive piece of legal poetry, preventing me from working for any direct competitor in the AI or sustainable energy space for 24 months. Zenith Corp, with its burgeoning AI ethics division, was named specifically. Even if they came crawling back, even if they offered me the CEO position on a silver platter, I was now legally, contractually, and irrevocably untouchable. Her checkmate was delivered to a king who had already left the board. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel the ghost of the rage I would have felt. The crushing injustice of it all, the helpless anger of being swatted down by a force you can't see or fight. But it was like trying to remember the pain of a long-healed wound. The scar was there, but the sting was gone. Anger was a luxury I couldn't afford, and more importantly, a tool I no longer needed. My fury had been reforged into something colder, sharper, and infinitely more useful. Resolve. Wasting time being angry at Jessica was like being angry at a storm for raining. It was simply her nature. My focus was now on the source of the storm itself. I pulled up the contacts on my phone, my thumbs scrolling past names I hadn't spoken to in years. I stopped on one. David. My first real mentor, a brilliant, cynical senior analyst who had taken me under his wing when I was a terrified intern. He'd left the corporate grind 2 years ago to start his own boutique consulting firm specializing in risk management and corporate investigations. It was time to call in a favor. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "This is David." His voice was the same, a gravelly baritone that always sounded like he was 3 coffees deep and 5 steps ahead of everyone else. "David, it's Maya Chen." There was a half-second of silence, then a boom of recognition. "Maya, as I live and breathe, what a surprise." "Don't tell me you're finally escaping that snake pit." I smiled. "You could say that. How have you been, David? Is the life of a CEO treating you well?" "It's a headache and a nightmare, and I love every second of it," he chuckled. "Beats making PowerPoints for morons anyway." "What's going on?" "You don't strike me as the type for a social call during the week." "You're right. I resigned from my job today, David." "You're kidding me." The humor in his voice was replaced by genuine surprise. "What finally did it? Did they try to make you use Comic Sans in a presentation again?" "Wait, let me guess. You got the Zenith executive spot. You finally did it. I knew you would." "Funnily enough, no," I said, walking over to my window and looking out at the city lights. "Zenith canceled my interview about an hour ago. I took a position as a senior strategic analyst at Tesla instead." The silence on the other end of the line was deeply satisfying. I heard a low whistle. "Jesus, Maya. From that backwater paper pusher to Tesla? That's not a step up. That's a damn space launch." "Congratulations." "Seriously. But what the hell happened with Zenith? I know how much you wanted that. You've been working towards it for years." "It's a long story," I said, "and it's actually the reason I'm calling. I need a favor. And it requires the kind of absolute discretion your new firm is becoming famous for." The line was quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence. He was listening, assessing. "I'm listening," he said, his voice now back to the focused, analytical tone I knew so well. "You sound different, Maya, calm, focused." "Let's just say I've had a significant wake-up call. It made me reevaluate my priorities." "Okay, what's the play?" "The play involves my now former colleague, a woman named Jessica Miller, and more importantly, her uncle, a Zenith board member named Richard Sterling." I heard the soft, scratching sound of a pen on paper. "Sterling," David said, his voice tight. "I know the name. Old East Coast money, sharp elbows, reputation for being ruthless. What's the situation?" "The situation," I said, choosing my words with surgical care, is that for the past 18 months, I have been compiling information. I have reason to believe Mr. Sterling has been using his position on Zenith's board, specifically his seat on the acquisitions committee, for more than just steering the company. I believe he's been leveraging privileged, non-public information about potential takeover targets to make strategically timed personal investments. Front-running, to be specific. The line went dead quiet. Maya, David said slowly, his voice deadly serious. Do you have any idea what you're saying? That's not just a firing offense, that's a federal crime. You're talking about major SEC violations. I'm aware, I said calmly. That's why I'm calling you. I have documents. Encrypted transaction logs, shell corporation deeds, communication records. I got them through unconventional channels, but the data is solid. The problem is, I'm just some girl who got her interview canceled. If I go to the authorities, I'm a disgruntled former candidate with a vendetta. It gets buried, and Sterling's lawyers tear me apart. But if a reputable third-party firm like yours were to present an anonymous and professionally curated file to the right people at the SEC, it becomes a credible threat they can't ignore. Unconventional channels, he repeated, ignoring the flattery. You mean you stole it, or someone stole it for you? I prefer the term whistleblower disclosure, I replied smoothly. The point is, the information is real and it's actionable. This man used his power to sabotage my career for the pettiest of reasons. I've now learned that's just the tip of the iceberg. He's a cancer, David. I just want to put the diagnosis in front of a doctor who can cut it out. I could hear him breathing on the other end, the slow, steady rhythm of a man weighing immense risk against immense opportunity. He had built his firm on being smarter and more ruthless than his competitors. This was the kind of case that could make a reputation. Maya, this is heavy. You're asking me to pick a fight with a man who can crush my company with a single phone call if this goes wrong. I'm not asking you to pick a fight, I corrected him. I'm asking you to be a conduit, a professional service, anonymity guaranteed for you and for me. I can wire you a retainer for your services tonight. Your firm's only role is to verify the integrity of the data, package it, and make the delivery. What the SEC does with it after that is on them. He was silent for a full 30 seconds. I let him think. I had played my card. You're really not the same kid I remember, he said finally, a note of grudging admiration in his voice. What happened to you? I grew up, I said. So, can you help me, David? Or can you point me to someone who can? Another pause, then. Don't wire me any money, not yet. Encrypt the file and send it to my personal address. Use the PGP key I sent you for your birthday last year. I'll look at it. No promises. But I'll look at it. For you. That's all I ask, I said. Thank you, David. Don't thank me yet, he grumbled, but the deal was struck. Just be careful, Maya. Dragons like Richard Sterling don't just breathe fire. They burn the whole village down to get at one person. I know, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. But this time, I'm the one bringing the matches. I didn't go into the office the next morning. I let the hours stretch, let the entire company work through the day of my failed Zenith interview. I pictured the whispers, the sympathetic glances I wasn't there to receive, the quiet satisfaction radiating from Jessica's desk. I let her have her victory for 7 full hours. I let her believe the world was exactly as she'd designed it. At 4:30 p.m., when the office would be starting to wind down, when the guards were down and the week was all but over, I walked through the lobby doors. I wasn't dressed in my usual corporate attire. I was wearing the dark, sharply tailored blazer I'd bought for my Tesla onboarding. Power dressing, I believe they call it. The security guard at the front desk, used to seeing me scurry in at 8 a.m., did a subtle double-take. I gave him a nod and strode directly to the elevators. The office was just as I'd pictured it. A low-level hum of activity, people counting down the minutes until 5 o'clock. No one noticed me at first. I didn't go to my desk with its sad, wilting plant and stack of unfiled reports. I walked directly to the main printer, logged in, and printed 2 documents. My official, immediate resignation letter pulled from the HR portal and the first page of my fully executed Tesla employment contract, the one with the letterhead and my signature gleaming at the bottom. The papers were still warm as I picked them up. Only then did I turn my attention to Jessica. She was leaning back in her chair, scrolling idly through her phone with a look of supreme bored contentment. She looked up as I approached, her expression shifting from surprise to a kind of pitying contempt. "Maya," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "What are you doing here?" I thought, well, I'm sure today's been difficult for you. "I'm just here to tie up a few loose ends," I said, my voice cutting through the office hum. I took the 2 pages and slapped them down on her desk. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Several people looked over, startled. "This is for you." Jessica's eyes flickered down to the papers. She read the bold heading on the first page. Notice of immediate employment termination. A slow, cruel smile spread across her face. "You're quitting?" she said, leaning back with a sigh of mock relief. "Well, I suppose that's for the best. This role was never quite the right fit for you, was it?" "Oh, I agree, it is for the best," I said, planting my hands on her desk and leaning in, just as I had the day before. "You think you've won, don't you? You think by killing my Zenith interview, you finally put me back in my box for good." She had the gall to feign innocence, her eyes wide and guileless. "I have no idea what you're talking about. I heard your interview was canceled. That's a real shame. You must be devastated." "Cut the act, Jessica. The games are over," I said, my voice low and intense. Heads were turning now, conversations faltering. "I know all about the panicked phone call to Uncle Richard. I know about the unforeseen scheduling conflicts." A truly masterful performance, and I wanted to look you in the eye and tell you that it was all for nothing. I tapped the second sheet of paper I'd placed on her desk. "I signed my new contract with Tesla this morning, before your uncle had even finished his breakfast, while you were still dreaming of your great victory." Her smug expression froze and shattered. Her gaze dropped to the second page. She saw the sleek, instantly recognizable Tesla logo. She saw the title, Senior Strategic Analyst. She saw the astronomical salary, which I had deliberately not redacted. Her face went from pink to white in a heartbeat. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that's impossible. That can't be right." "Why not? Because you thought I was out of options? Because you thought Zenith was my only life raft?" Her panic overrode her composure, and the truth, far uglier than I had imagined, came spilling out. "Because I had Uncle Richard blacklist you," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper that was still loud enough to carry. "Not just at Zenith. He made calls yesterday afternoon to his contacts at every major firm. You were supposed to be flagged, a high-risk hire with a history of instability. No one in the entire tech sector was supposed to touch you." I blinked. That part was new. In my first life, she had only ever been precise, targeting one opportunity at a time. This was an escalation, a scorched earth policy born of pure terror. "Blacklisted across the entire sector?" I said, a slow, genuine smile spreading across my face. "Wow, that's even more thorough than you were last time. You're getting more ambitious, I'll give you that." The words snagged in her brain, derailing her panic. Her eyes, which had been darting around in fury, snapped back to mine. They were filled with a new, deeper confusion. "Last time?" she stammered. "What are you talking about? What do you mean, last time?" This was the moment to stop playing her game and start playing my own. I leaned in closer, my voice barely audible. "It's a funny thing about having multiple lives, Jessica. You learn to keep better backup plans. You learn who your enemies are before they even know your name. And you learn, most importantly, that there are no permanent victories." The color, what little had remained, drained from her face entirely. This wasn't anger or professional rivalry anymore. This was something else, something she couldn't comprehend. The carefully constructed walls of her reality were cracking. "Multiple lives?" she whispered, her hands starting to tremble. "You're not making any sense. You're insane." "Maya, you're scaring me." "Am I?" I said softly. "Good, you should be. I straightened up, leaving the two pieces of paper on her desk like a tombstone. I didn't say another word. I turned my back on her stunned silence, on the gawking faces of our colleagues. I didn't go to my desk to pack up my things. They could mail them to me. I walked towards the glass doors of the exit, my steps even and measured. As I passed the reception area, my eyes drifted up to the large red digital clock on the wall. The numbers were stark. 4:47 p.m. My mind did the quick calculation. David's meticulously compiled data package had been delivered by a bonded courier to the SEC's regional enforcement office at noon. It would take them hours to review, verify, and get an emergency warrant signed by a federal judge. The FBI agents tasked with serving it would be assembling now. They would move on Richard Sterling's penthouse office tower around 8 o'clock, just as he was enjoying his post-dinner scotch. In just over 3 hours, Jessica's entire world, the money, the influence, the untouchable power she wielded like a toy, was going to come crashing down. And she had absolutely no idea it was coming. 6 months. In 6 months, a universe can die and be reborn. I had spent that time at Tesla, throwing myself into work that was challenging and vital, building a new life on the foundation of my reclaimed future. The whispers about my dramatic exit from my old company, followed by the seismic news of Richard Sterling's arrest, had made me something of a legend in certain circles. I was the quiet analyst who had somehow toppled a titan. David's firm was now fielding calls from Fortune 500 companies, his reputation for discretion and lethally effective results cemented. Tonight was a celebration of that new reality. It wasn't my old office holiday party. It was the annual Tech Guild Holiday Gala, a sprawling, opulent affair held in the grand ballroom of a five-star hotel. I was there as a guest of David's, a peer among the city's brightest minds. The air buzzed with champagne-fueled conversation and the soft strains of a string quartet. And through that buzz, I saw her. She was standing alone near a towering ice sculpture, a ghost at the feast. The designer dress she wore hung on her frame, the fabric wrinkled as if she'd been sleeping in it for a week. Her hair was limp, her face pale and gaunt, stripped of its usual mask of makeup and condescension. She looked lost and brittle, a porcelain doll that had been dropped one too many times. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and a jolt of something, recognition, hatred, dread, passed through her. She immediately began pushing her way towards me, a heat-seeking missile of pure desperation. I didn't move. I took a slow sip of my champagne, turned slightly, and waited for her by the fountain, its cascading water a soothing counterpoint to the confrontation I knew was inevitable. Maya. Her voice was a raw, trembling thing, completely alien from the sharp, cutting tone I knew. She came to a stop in front of me, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists at her sides. "Jessica," I replied, my voice even. "I have to say, I'm surprised to see you here. I wouldn't have thought you were in the mood for celebrating." A sound that was half sob, half laugh escaped her lips. Celebrating? My uncle had a massive stroke in his holding cell last week. He's paralyzed on his left side. He can't even speak. My mother, she won't leave his side. My family is destroyed. Our accounts are frozen. The lawyers say it's hopeless. The evidence you gave them is too perfect, too airtight. They think he'll die in prison." "That is a shame," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. I took another sip of champagne, the bubbles fizzing on my tongue. "Don't!" she snapped, a flicker of her old fire returning. "Don't you dare stand there with your champagne and your smug new life and pretend you're anything but the cause of all this. You knew. You somehow knew about the SEC investigation before it happened. Before anyone did. How? What did you do?" "I have my sources." "Was it Tesla?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Did you trade this information for your job? Did you tell your new bosses to destroy my uncle so you could get ahead?" "Let's just say I have excellent timing," I replied, setting my half-empty glass down on the edge of the fountain. "It's always been a gift of mine." "A gift?" she shrieked, and now a few nearby conversations faltered as people turned to look. "You call this a gift? You ruined my life. You destroyed my entire family. And for what? Because I deleted one of your stupid emails? Because I tried to get a job that you wanted?" "It was never about one job, Jessica," I said, my voice dropping. forcing her to lean in and the onlookers to strain to hear. It was never about Zenith. It was about everything. It was about the internship you sabotaged my chances for 4 years ago by spreading rumors that I was unstable. It was about the project you took credit for, the one that got you a promotion. It was about every closed door, every whispered lie, every opportunity you systematically poisoned, not because you wanted it, but because you couldn't bear the thought of me having it. You didn't just want to compete with me, you wanted to erase me. Her face contorted in a mask of disbelief and fury. You're insane. I'm the victim here. You are a monster, a snake, and I will make you pay for this. This isn't over. Her voice regained its strength, fueled by pure, impotent rage. You think you're safe in your new office? I will tell every single person in this room what you did. I will go to the press. I will burn your reputation to the ground until no one will even share an elevator with you. I will make sure you never work in this city again. Her threat hung in the air, pathetic and hollow. She was a general with no army, a queen with no kingdom, threatening a war she had already lost 100 times over. I let the silence stretch, let her stand there breathing heavily, her chest heaving with exertion. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw nothing but a black hole of envy and spite. There was no remorse, no understanding. She would never change. Actually, Jessica, I said, my voice calm and final, it is over, for you at least. You should probably check your phone. Her tirade came to a screeching halt. She stared at me, her brow furrowed in confusion. What? What are you talking about? My phone? I sent you an email a few minutes ago. I thought you'd want to see it before everyone else here does, I said, gesturing vaguely to the crowd of industry power players around us. And I CC'd a few people, about 500 of them. Consider it my holiday gift to the tech community. A citywide HR bulletin. With trembling fingers, she fumbled in her designer handbag and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unlock it. I watched as she navigated to her inbox, her face pale in the screen's glow. I saw her eyes widen as she read the subject line. Anonymized whistleblower report, a case study in 18 months of workplace sabotage. She tapped it open. What is this? She whispered, scrolling down. These are screenshots. Do you recognize them? I asked gently. They're from a private off-site backup server your Uncle Richard kept. The man was nothing if not thorough. He backed up everything from his company accounts, including every email he ever exchanged with you, even the ones you so carefully deleted from your sent folder. Her breath hitched. Her finger swiped frantically across the screen, scrolling through a nightmare gallery of her own creation. I knew the contents by heart. The email to her uncle asking him to flag my resume at Zenith. The follow-up confirming he would have me blacklisted. The email from a year prior where she'd forwarded a confidential project proposal of mine to a competitor. The one from even further back, where she'd fabricated a story about my mental health and sent it to our old internship coordinator. 18 months of her treachery, her own words, her own schemes, all laid bare in chronological order. The one about David's promotion, the lies about the quarterly report. Oh God, the one about the internship, she mumbled, her voice cracking as the full scope of her documented evil scrolled past her eyes. That's right, I said. All of it. A comprehensive, undeniable portfolio of your professional character. And, as of 5 minutes ago, that entire file, complete with a cover letter explaining its origins, was delivered to the personal inboxes of the HR directors at every Fortune 500 company in this city, to every major recruitment and headhunting firm, and for good measure, to every board member of the Tech Guild's Ethics Committee. The very people you were just threatening to call, they're probably reading about you right now. She looked up from her phone, her face a canvas of utter, absolute ruin. The fight was gone. The anger was gone. All that was left was the horrifying, vacant stare of someone whose entire world had just been atomized. How? She breathed, the word a tiny puff of air. How could you get those emails? I leaned in one last time, my voice a soft whisper against the sound of the fountain. I told you, Jessica. I have excellent timing. She didn't respond. She couldn't. The words, the concepts, were as alien to her as the dark side of the moon. Her mind, so adept at navigating the simple, brutal terrain of office politics and petty cruelty, had no framework for this. I looked at her one last time, a relic of a life I had already shed, and delivered the epitaph for our entire twisted history. Some people get second chances. I got a second life. I turned and walked away without looking back. I could feel the waves of her social destruction radiating behind me, the murmurs and pointed stares of the crowd, creating a quarantine zone around her. She was now an island, and the tide was going out. David was waiting for me near the exit, holding my coat. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He simply raised an eyebrow, a silent question. I gave him a small, weary nod. Understanding passed between us. We walked out of the grand ballroom, away from the glittering lights and the soft music, and into the cold, clean air of the winter night, leaving the ghosts of the past to haunt their own ruins. That was a year ago, not 6 months. The seasons have a way of turning faster when you're building instead of breaking. From my office on the top floor of Tesla's Austin headquarters, the world looks different. The promotion came 6 months after the gala. My work in shoring up the new autonomous driving AI against data poisoning and adversarial attacks got the attention of the right people. They didn't just want me analyzing systems, they wanted me to lead the team that designed them. I am now the director of the AI Ethics Division. My job is to predict the future, to see the vectors of attack before they form, to imagine all the ways a system can be corrupted, all the ways a person can be harmed by a flaw in the code, and to build defenses so strong that the thought of sabotage becomes a fool's errand. My first life made me a victim. My second made me a strategist. This life, the one I am forging now, is making me an architect. I heard about Jessica, of course. The gossip mill of an entire industry is ruthlessly efficient. With her family's name disgraced and their assets liquidated to pay SEC fines and legal fees, she was left with nothing. Worse than nothing, she had a reputation so toxic that her resume was effectively radioactive. No firm would touch her. There was only one place that would take her in. A small, bottom-feeding holding company bought the bankrupt husk of Sterling Investments for pennies on the dollar, mostly for its long-term commercial lease. And in an act of either supreme irony or calculated cruelty, they hired Jessica. She works the reception desk in the lobby of the building that used to bear her family's name. She answers the phones, signs for packages, and directs visitors to the offices of strangers who now inhabit her uncle's former empire. I sometimes picture her there, under the flat fluorescent lights, wearing a cheap, company-mandated blazer, watching the next generation of ambitious young women walk past her on their way to the top. I feel no pity. I feel no anger. I feel nothing at all. She is merely a data point, a case study in cause and effect. The work I do now is my penance and my purpose. I spend my days ensuring that the futures we build are sabotage-proof, that the systems designed to elevate humanity cannot be twisted by the petty insecurities of one person to destroy another. The next brilliant young analyst who finds herself in the crosshairs of a jealous rival won't have her career derailed by a deleted email or a false rumor, because my algorithms will have already flagged the anomalous behavior. The next innovator won't be blacklisted by an unseen enemy, because the network I'm designing will value transparent merit over whispered connections. The next person who tries to destroy someone's dreams will not find a scared, confused victim. They will find themselves facing a fortress of my own design, a system built by someone who has already died once to learn the lesson. My revenge wasn't just on Jessica, it was on the system that allowed her to exist. Revenge, I've learned, is not a dish best served cold. Cold is for leftovers. It's a meal best served from a future your enemy could never have conceived of, in a language they can't understand, for a crime they don't even remember committing. It is a dish prepared over the course of more than one lifetime, seasoned with the salt of tears you cried on a timeline that no longer exists. Revenge tastes sweetest when served across lifetime.